So you want to build a cool Java app, right? Maybe a simple calculator, a fun text-based adventure game, or even just a program that asks for your name. Well, you've probably hit a wall with the really basic question. How do I get my program to actually listen to the user? Today, we're going to crack that wide open.
Exactly. We all get pretty good at using System.out.println to make our programs talk at the user. But a good application, a useful one, needs to be a conversation. It's a two-way street. So how do we get our programs to just pause, wait, and react to whatever the user types in? That's the secret sauce for making things interactive, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll start at square one with what I'm calling the basic method. Then, we're going to level up to the power tool. This is the classic way developers handled input for years and years. After that, we'll see the simple solution, which is, spoiler alert, the modern way you'll probably use most of the time. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the final showdown to put them all head to head.
Let's start at the very beginning. We're going to look at the most direct, fundamental way to get input, and it uses something that should look super familiar, System.in.
It just makes sense, right? If System.out is our pipeline for sending stuff out to the console, then System.in has got to be the pipeline for bringing stuff in. And you'd be right, it even has a method called read, which sounds perfect. But, and this is a big but that has a really surprising twist that trips up a lot of new coders.
Okay, so here's the deal with System.in.read. First off, it only reads one single character at a time. Second, and this is the weird part, it gives you that character back as a number, an integer, not as text. And third, it makes you deal with this thing called an I/O exception, which is just Java's way of forcing you to think, hey, what if something goes wrong with the input? It seems simple on the surface, but this all leads to a major catch.
And here is that twist. This is where things get weird. When you type the number 7 and hit Enter, your program doesn't see the value 7. It sees the value 55. Why? Because it's giving you the ASCII code for that character. Just think of ASCII as a big, secret decoder ring, where every key on your keyboard has a secret number. The character 7 is number 55 on that list, and that is definitely not what you want if you're asking a user to type in their age.
And let's not forget the other huge problem. It only reads one character. So if your user tries to enter the number 55, your program only sees the first 5. To get the second 5, you'd have to call read all over again. You can just imagine what a nightmare it would be to read someone's name this way. It's just not practical for real-world stuff.
So, System.in by itself is clearly not going to cut it for most jobs. That's why, for a long time, developers had a much more robust solution. Let's check out that traditional, powerful approach. The power tool known as BufferedReader.
Setting this thing up is kind of like a multi-step recipe. You start with System.in, which gives you raw computer data, bytes. First, you have to wrap that inside an InputStreamReader, just to turn those bytes into characters we can actually read. Then, you wrap that inside a BufferedReader to make the whole process more efficient. Only after you've built this 3-layer cake can you finally call .readLine and get the user's input as a nice, clean string.
So why all that complexity? Well, it all comes down to being powerful and efficient. The buffer part of the name is the key. Instead of bugging the computer for one character at a time, it grabs a big chunk of text and holds it in memory, the buffer. This is way faster, especially if you're reading from a huge file. And for us, the most important part is that it gives us that awesome .readLine method, which finally lets us read a whole sentence at once.
So let's sum up BufferedReader. It's a massive improvement because it reads a whole line of text, no problem. The catch? You still have to do the work yourself to turn that text into a number if you need one. Also, it's considered a system resource, so good coding practice says you should close it when you're done to free up memory. It's powerful for sure, but definitely not simple.
After seeing all that setup code, you've got to be thinking, come on, in modern Java, there has to be a simpler way to do this, right?
And you are 100% correct. Let's meet this simple solution, the scanner class. It was literally added to Java to fix this exact problem and make getting user input as easy as it always should have been.
This slide really says everything you need to know. Just look at the difference. On the left, you've got that complicated, nested mess for BufferedReader. On the right, one clean, simple line to create a scanner. You just tell it to listen to System.in, and bam, you're done. It's beautiful.
And the magic of Scanner doesn't even stop at the setup. It comes with a whole toolbox of methods built right in. You need an integer? Just call it .nextInt. You need a whole line of text? Call it .nextLine. The scanner does all the heavy lifting of converting the text into the right data type for you. No more messing around with manual parsing.
Okay, so we've seen the basic way, the powerful but complicated way, and the simple, modern way. Now it's time for the final showdown, where we put them all side by side so you know exactly which tool to grab for the job.
This table just lays it all out perfectly. System.out.println, it's really just for learning how things work under the hood. BufferedReader, that's your high-performance beast for really demanding jobs like reading huge files super fast. But for almost everything else, for all the console apps you're going to build as a beginner or for day-to-day tasks, Scanner is the undisputed champion. It's easy, and it just works.
So here's the bottom line, the one thing you really need to remember. Unless you have a very specific, high-performance reason to do otherwise, your go-to tool for getting user input from now on should be Scanner. It's simple, it's powerful enough, and it lets you focus on the fun part, your app's logic, not the boring plumbing underneath.
And that's really what this is all about. It's about giving you the power to build way more interesting things. Now that your Java programs can actually listen, the door is wide open for you to create interactive games, useful tools, and so much more. So the only question left is, what are you going to build first?